one for you. Laura held up the gray stone in the sunlight until the mottled pattern of six-sided fossils appear. Do you remember what you told me? She pressed the Petoskey stone, fresh out of the bottom of Lake Michigan, into Rob's palm. He turned it over a few times, recalling the evening they'd shared on that same stretch of beach soon after they met. Of course, he'd given her a similar stone before explaining that legend says they carry sunbeams of promise. That's what he'd given her when he'd been vulnerable and willing to share his emotions. Now, he didn't say another word. Part of him wanted to throw the stone she'd given him back in the water. Instead, he just sat there and let her rest, her head on his shoulder. For the moment, as the sun slowly melted into its own image, he tried only to think about her. Once, she'd been everything to him. Laura and the kids needed him. That's what he needed to remember. If he wanted them to have a future, he needed to move on and forget about the past. First, thank you to my publisher, Adelaide Books, for having me here on this panel, and thanks to all of you for coming. My name is Cheryl Crabb, and I come to you from Detroit, Michigan, where I live with my husband and our 3 daughters. Each summer, in August, we travel across the state to vacation in the Sleeping Bear Dunes along Lake Michigan. This is where I discovered the fictional town of Sanctuary. I write realistic fiction about the real lives of real people and the struggles they face. I also try to distill their dreams. I believe everyone has a story. The other side of Sanctuary is the story of Rob and Laura Sanders and the fate of the young couple's troubled marriage as a dark series of events unfolds. It's set in the dunes along Lake Michigan, but in contrast to the beauty of their small beach town, which fills with summer tourists, Laura and Rob suffer from a failing business and a dying love. Nothing prepares them for the tragic accident that follows and the harsh revelations that cast them adrift. They search for answers, unaware they're traveling toward a collision that will either shatter or save their vulnerable family, or maybe both. Theirs is a story of inspiration and desperation. On the surface, The Other Side of Sanctuary is a dual narrative psychological thriller, a fast-paced, he said, she said story of survival, based on the premise that everyone needs a sanctuary. But what happens when there's no longer a place for refuge? Underlying the novel, set in the fictional town of Sanctuary, is a snapshot of small-town America in the summer of 2016, leading up to the presidential election. It offers an intimate look at today's struggling working-class families who lack jobs in the industrial Midwest and are barely staying afloat by taking on more and more debt. This is their existential crisis. This isn't intended as a political novel. Rather, it reflects the income inequality and diminished economic mobility, which is giving rise to populist movements not only in the United States under Donald Trump, but with the Brexiteers in Britain, France's rioters in yellow vests, and Austria's far right. So where does this all leave immigrant workers, including the dreamers? In the heartland, families like the Sanders are at the center of the battle for the soul of America. No one wants it to be this complicated. And yet, for Rob and Laura, who are in their mid-20s raising 3 kids under 5, life only seems to get more complex. After falling into debt from their bar, they move into Rob's parents' attic. Rob feels defeated. Lowering on the horizon, the sun beamed straight into his eyes and left him seeing spots. Laura nudged him in the side. "It's so beautiful here. Do you ever feel like you're not living up to it?" At first, her question made him laugh. Living up to what? Shouldn't we be living a beautiful life? When he considered this, his stomach turned, as it had earlier when he stepped over the dead fish. He tried to ignore the sour taste of the hot dogs they grilled for dinner at their son Nate's birthday party. "Laura, people come here when the beauty of the landscape matches the way they feel. They see what they want to see. It's impossible to live like that all the time. Lake Michigan has its good days and bad days. Most people don't stay long enough to realize it can turn on you." When Rob's struggling high school friends returned to town along with ghosts from the past, he regresses and refuses to tell Laura about the secrets from before her time. Laura, a Wisconsin native and half Ojibwa, begins to feel like she might never belong in Sanctuary, yet she has nowhere else to turn. Her mother and grandfather are gone. Her big sister Shania, who left when they were teenagers after their mother's death from cancer, may as well be gone. Laura resents being left alone with their abusive father, though deep down, she still misses her sister. Feeling isolated, Laura wonders whether she and Rob can persevere like the tattoo needled between his shoulder blades. She knows they need to talk, but they run out of time. On the morning after Nate receives a scooter from his grandparents for his birthday, tragedy strikes in the form of a black Mercedes, traveling, perhaps too fast, down Main Street. Laura's best friend calls to tell her something awful has happened. By the time she reached the scene, a crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Everyone was looking at her. Where was her boy? In the gutter lay the handlebars of Nate's scooter. Suddenly she remembered he wasn't wearing a helmet. Any sanctuary she was clinging to is gone. This is an American story, and yet the struggles Laura and Rob face in caring for family, loving family, protecting family, or failing to, are universal. These are desperate cries. As author Ellen Lesser describes the other side of Sanctuary, like the Great Lake at the heart of this story, the people we love, who we most want to trust, can be beautiful but dangerous, even deadly. And yet, despite the pull of dark forces, these flawed but lovable characters emerge bathed in light. This is a tale of not only how we fail, but how we fight through to the other side, to forgive ourselves and each other. Thank you.